multiplying a fraction by a fraction with conceptual understanding, that means computation through modeling and reasoning. So I have a third times a third. Well, when I'm trying to reason a third times a third, if I'm visualizing a third times a third, I'm not getting much of a mental image. However, if I add some context and I say a third of 1/3, now I'm picturing a third and picturing removing or partitioning that third into thirds. So let's take a look. So this rectangle will represent 1. Since I'm looking at thirds, I'm going to partition this rectangle into 3 pieces. And now I'm going to shade in 1, so it's representing 1/3. We need to find out, well, what is 1/3 of that third? So we'll partition that third into 3. And we'll continue to partition the rest of our 1 unit into thirds. And now I have each third has been partitioned into thirds. So that means that I now have 9 units. I'm looking at that 1/3 and I want to determine what is 1/3 of that third. That unit right there is now representing 1/9. A third of a third is equal to a ninth. Let's take a look at another example. Half times 2/3. Again, building that mental image, a half times 2/3 does not bring up a visual for me. If I think about it as half of 2/3, now I'm picturing 2/3 and picturing partition that 2/3 into half, or 2/3 of half. So now I'm picturing half and determining, well, how much is 2/3 of that half? So let's have this rectangle again. This rectangle will represent 1. I'm going to partition this rectangle into thirds. And we'll shade in 2 of our thirds. We would like to determine what half of our 2/3 is equal to. Well, when I think of 2/3, or I just think of half, if I take something into half, I have 2. Half of 2 is 1. So that means if I take half of 2/3, well, 2/3 is composed of a third plus a third. Where really quickly through my image, I can say, well, half of 2/3 is simply a third. We'll go a step further, and we'll partition each third into half. So now I have 2, and we'll get the third as well. So now I can see that I have 6 units in total. I'm now going to take half of my first third, which is 1/6. Half of that second third, which is another 6. So I now have a 6 plus a 6, which is 2/6. 1/3 and 2/6 are equivalent. Let's take a look thinking about this in another way. So now I'm not half of 2/3, I'm going to do 2/3 of half. So let's let our rectangle represent 1. We'll partition our rectangle into halves. There's that half. We want to find out what's 2/3 of that half. So we'll partition that half into thirds. And now we will take and partition the other half into thirds. Again, now we're seeing our 1 has been partitioned into 6 units or 6 pieces. We're looking to find 2 of those. 2/3 of half is equal to 2/6. Let's take a look at one more example. 1/10 times 1/10. Again, when I'm saying 1/10 times 1/10, just thinking of that multiplication symbol, I'm not getting that visual. If I think of 1/10 of 1/10, now I'm picturing a tenth and finding, well, what's a tenth of that tenth? I might not know what the answer is, but I can reason and say, well, the tenth of a tenth, it means I'm looking at a pretty small piece. So let's let this rectangle represent 1. We want to find out, well, what's a tenth of 1? Well, tenth of 1 is simply 1/10. We've partitioned our 1 into 10 pieces. We're looking at 1, so therefore we have 1/10. Now we need to find out what's 1/10 of that tenth. Well, I'll partition that tenth into 10 pieces. And now 1/10 of that 1/10 is equal to 1/100th. There are 100 units there. We are considering just one of those units. So 1/10 of 1/10 is equal to 1/100. hundredth. This video is all about multiplication of fractions using conceptual understanding through reasoning and modeling.